Chapter 10. As planets do the sun, we orbit round God, according to laws as elegant as Kepler's. God is as sensible to us as a sun to a planet. Though we do not see him, yet we know where in our orbits we run, when we are closer, when more distant, when in his light, and when in shadow of our own making. We feel as components of gravity his love, his need, whatever it be that keeps us circling. Surely if a planet be a living creature, then it knows by something even more wondrous than human sight where its sun shines, however far it lie. From Reverend Wicks Cherrycoke, Unpublished Sermons. Show us upon the orrery, suggests Pliny. I get to light the sun, cries Pitt, dashing for the card table where the tapers are kept in a drawer. Tenebrae finds herself in the general convergence upon the machine in the corner, quite close to her cousin Athelma, who is trying to remember how old she is. He cannot recall her looking quite this, he supposes, nubile. And how old does it make him then? Briefly he beholds the grey edge of a cloud of despair, promises himself to think about it later, smiles and sallies. Remember the time you snipped off a lock of your hair, and we fashioned it into a comet and placed it in the orrery. That grew back a long time ago, cousin. When you were quite a bit shorter as well, I almost had to sit down to kiss you hello. Yet now, that is dangerous territory, sir. How so? An innocent peck upon the cheek of a child. Had you thought to inquire of the child, Tenebrae's chin rising slowly, you might have found your education furthered in ways unexpected, Thelma. Athelma, for a split second, is gazing straight up into her nostrils, one of which now flares into pink illumination as Pitt's taper sets alight the central lanthorn of the orrery, representing the sun. The other planets wait, all but humming, taut within their spidery linkages back to the crankshaft and the crank, held in the didactic grasp of the Reverend Cherrycoke. The twins, pushed to the back, content themselves with the movements of the outermost planets, Saturn and the new Georgian, but 3 years old. Dr. Nessel, the renowned German engineer, last spring showed up unexpectedly in Philadelphia, having traversed the sea under wartime conditions to add free of charge the new planet to the numerous orreries he had built in America. In each apparatus he fashioned the planet a little differently. By the time he got to Philadelphia, he was applying to the miniature greenish-blue globes map mondes of some intricacy, as if there were being revealed to him, one orrery at a time, a world with a history even longer than our own, a recognizable creator, oceans that had to be crossed, lands that had to be fought over, other species to be conquered. The children have passed many an hour, lenses in hand, gazing upon this new world and becoming easy with it, They have imagined and partly composed a book, History of the New Planet, the twins providing the wars, and Bray the scientific inventions and useful crafts. Here then, the Reverend, having smoothly cranked Venus, Earth, and the Sun into proper alignment. As seen from the Earth, Venus, here, was to pass across the disk of the Sun. Seen from Cape Town, 5.5 hours more or less, limb to limb. What observers must determine are the exact times this passage begins and ends. From a great many such observations round the world, and especially those widely separated north and south, might be reckoned the value of the solar parallax. What's that? Pitt and Pliny want to know. The size of the Earth in seconds of arc, as seen by an observer upon the surface of the Sun. Don't his feet get blistered? Hollers Pitt, with his brother goading him on. Isn't he too busy hopping about? And what of his telescope? Won't it melt? All of these and more, replies the Reverend, making it super remarkable that through the magic of celestial trigonometry, to which you could certainly be applying yourselves, such measurements may yet be taken, as if the telescope, in mysterious wise, were transporting us safely through all the dangers of the awesome gulf of sky, out to the object we wish to examine. A vector of desire. Thank ye, Depew, the phrase exact. Depew is the son of Ives le Spark, like Athelma, home on a visit from school, in this case from Cambridge, travelling the Atlantic to and fro by Falmouth packet as easily as taking the machine to Newcastle. He has shown an early aptitude with figures. God be merciful to him, silently requests the Reverend. Somebody, somewhere in the world, watching the planet go dark against the sun, dark, mad, mortal, the goddess, in quite another aspect indeed, cannot help blurting, exactly at the moment, from Sappho's Fragment 95, seeming to wreck thereby the orb. O Hesperus, you bring back all that the bright day scattered. You bring in the sheep and the goat. You bring the child back to her mother. Thank you for sharing that with us, recalling that this is sunrise, dear, rise, not sunset. Come, she's not yet detached. Let us see. Well, will you look at that? A sort of long black filament yet connects her to the limb of the sun, though she be moved well and onto its face, much like an ink drop about to fall from the quill of a forgetful scribbler, sidewise, of course. Quick, someone, secure the time! This or odd behaviour like it is going on all over the world, all day long, that 5th and 6th of June, in Latin, in Chinese, in Polish, in silence, upon rooftops and mountain peaks, out of bedchamber windows, close together in the naked sunlight, whilst the wife minds the beats of the clock. Through Gregorians and Newtonians, achromatic and rainbow-smeared, brand new reflectors made for the occasion, and ancient refractors of preposterous French focal lengths. Observers lie, they sit, they kneel, and witness something in the sky. Among those attending snouts earth-wide, the moment of first contact produces a collective brain pang, as if for something lost and already unclaimable. After the years of preparation, the long and at best queasy voyaging, the station arrived at, the latitude and longitude well secured, the week of the transit, the day, the hour, the minute. And at last 'tis, hey, where am I? Astronomers will seek to record 4 instants of perfect tangency between Venus's disk and the Sun's. 2 are at ingress, external contact at the first touch outside the Sun's limb, and then internal contact at the instant the small black disk finally detaches from the inner circumference of the great yellow one, Venus now standing alone against the face of the Sun. The other 2 come at egress, this time first internal, then external contact, and then 8 years till the next, and for this generation last opportunity. As if the creation's dark engineer had purposely arranged the intervals thus to provoke a certain instruction upon the limits to human grandeur imposed by mortality. The sky remains clouded up till the day of the transit. Friday the 5th of June. Both the Siemens and the Vrooms speed about in unaccustomed bustle compared to the astronomers, who seem unnaturally calm. Dutch ado about nothing, Mason remarks. Dixon agrees. And they're usually so stolid, too. Els comes skidding across the floor in her stockinged feet, heading for the kitchen with an apron's load of potatoes. Nothing to worry about, she cries. 'Twill clear up in plenty of time. Even Cornelius is up on the roof, scanning the mists with a nautical spyglass, reporting upon hopeful winds and bright patches. 'Tis ever like this before a cloudless day, he assures them. The slaves speak inaudibly and are seen to gaze toward the mountains. They have never observed their owners behaving like this. They begin to smile, tentatively but directly, at Mason and Dixon, of whom one is insomniac and one is not. Afterward, none in the household will be able to agree which was which. Drops of what proves to be ketchup in the pantry suggest Dixon is the sleepless one, whilst a wine glass abandoned upon a chicken battery indicates Mason. The rattle watch make a point of coming by every hour and in front of Siemens singing out the time of night, adding, "And all's clouded over yet." Somehow everyone is awake at first light. The sun ascended in a thick haze and immediately entered a dark cloud, as Mason and Dixon will report later in the Philosophical Transactions. Clock time is 0 hours, 12 minutes, 0 seconds. 23 minutes later, they have their first sight of Venus. Each lies with his eye clapped to the snout of an identical 2.5-foot Gregorian reflector made by Mr. Short, with darkening nozzles by Mr. Bird. Quite a tremor, Mason grumbles. They'll have to ascend a bit more in the sky, and here comes this damned haze again. Upon first making out the planet, Dixon becomes as a sinner converted. God in his glory. Steady, advises Mason in a vexed tone. Dixon remembers the tale Emerson loved to tell, of Galileo before the cardinals, creaking to his feet after being forced to recant, muttering, "Nonetheless, it moves." Watch, patiently as before the minute hand of a clock becomes still enough, and 'twould all begin to move. This, Dixon understands, is what Galileo was risking so much for. this majestic dawn heresy. 'Twas seeing not only our Creator about his work, he tells Mason later, but Newton and Kepler too, confirmed in theirs. The arrival, perfectly as calculated, the three bodies sliding into a single line, it put me in a daze for fair. Whatever the cause, the times he records are 2 to 4 seconds ahead of Mason's. With all the other corrections to make, now must we also introduce another for observational impatience, supposes Mason, styling it Leonation, perhaps. As well might we correct for tauricity, replies Dixon, or delays owing to caution inflexible. The girls have also been observers of the transit, having cajoled a sailor of their acquaintance into lending them a nautical spyglass, and smoked with sheep tallow candles their own darkening lenses, taking turns at the glass, even allowing their parents a peep now and then, jet breathing, "She's really there," Greet adding, "Right on time too," and Al's hummed. We may imagine what Al's was up to, and what transpired just as the last of the black filament, holding the planet to the inner limb of the sun, gave way, and she dropped at last full onto that mottled bright disk, dimmed by the lenses to a fierce moon that eyes might bear. As before the transit, the month of May crept unnaturally so. After it will June, July, August and September hasten by miraculously till early in October, when Captain Harold of the Mercury finds a lapse in the weather workable enough to embark the astronomers and take them to St. Helena Inn, by which time everyone is more than ready for a change of company. The northwest rains have well possessed the town. All intrigue lies under moratorium, as if the goddess of love in her visitation had admonished all who would invoke her to search their hearts and try not to betray her quite so much. After the transit, astronomers and hosts walk about for days in deep stupor, like rakes and doxies after some great catastrophe of the passions. The Zeeman servant difficulties being resolved, the astronomers return to that table, and for the next 4 months pursue lives of colourless rectitude, with the food no better nor worse waiting upon the winds. In the mountains the bull's eye is sovereign. All over town impulse, chastened, increasingly defers to stolidity. Visiting Indian mystics go into trances they once believed mindless enough, which here prove ridottos of excess beside the purposed rainy day inanition of the Dutch. The slaves, as if to preserve a secret invariance, grow more visible and distinct, their voices stronger, and their music more pervasive, as if the rain were carrying these from distant parts of town. Johanna and the girls, after a brief few weeks in a nun-like withdrawal from the frivolous, Jet going so far as to cover her hair with a diaphanous wimple she has fashioned of curtain stuff, are all back to their old theatrics. This time to the delight of a trio of young company writers lately arrived at False Bay, Mr. Delver Warp and the brothers Vote, coming home from Bengal non-nabobical as when they went out, with only enough in their pockets to draw the interest of Cape belles who are far less particular than the Vrooms, and fearful that if they don't get it, 'twill be as soon gambled away into the purses of sea sharpers. Corrupted by India, yet poor, ungovernably lewd, yet unwrinkled, and withal, what a heaven-sent source of white blood are these lads. Joanna can almost see those babies now, up on the block, adorable enough to sell themselves, kicking their feet in the air and squealing. And she grows monomaniacal in her pursuit, whilst Ostra finds herself calculating which of the sprigs shall be easiest to seduce, and which, if any, more of a challenge. Presently, from across the backyards, jealously patrolled by their predatory hens, come once again sounds of feminine merriment. Mason looks over at Dixon. "At least they're back to normal over there," he remarks. "For a while I puzzled. Had the town undergone some abrupt conversion? Had I, without knowing it?" Dixon recalls when Wesley came to preach at Newcastle. His first sermon in the northeast, the congregations immense, all the side and beyond transformed, belonging to the Spirit. It lasted for weeks after, though it may have been months, for all I knew of time in those days. I was a lad, but I could make it out. Little by then surprised me, yet this was the canniest thing upon the coaly Tyne, since Harry Clasper outkeeled the lad from Hetton Hall. Nothing like it again that I've noticed, until this transit to Venus, this turning of soul. Have they felt it? They're beginning to talk to their slaves. Few, if any, beatings, though the best to whisper, not to jeopardize it too much. The Dutch are afraid, Mason is able to contribute, unto death. Why, aye, so do I recollect myself, the first time it happened to me. Mason, suspicious, sniffing enthusiasm. To you? Do they allow you to talk about that? I've been booted out of Rabbi meeting, haven't I? I can reveal all the mystic secrets I wish. One first must keep one's hat on one's head, correct? Ah, the Spirit ever fancies a bonny hat. But the fairly principal thing is to sit quietly. It took me till well out of youth to learn, though now I'm not sure I remember how any more. That's it. Sit quietly, and Christ will come. We spoke of it as the working of the Spirit within. 'Tis a distinct change from the everyday. Thou wouldn't be able to miss it, should it happen. Yet then you say it passes. It abides. 'Tis we who are ever recalled from it to tend to our various mortal requirements. And so another such visit soon becomes necessary, another great turning, and so forth. Howbeit, 'tis all desire, and desire but embodiment in the world of what Quakers have understood as grace. Starting about then, rain-bound, whenever he may, Mason contrives to sit in some shuttered room as quietly as he knows how, waiting for a direct experience of Christ. But he keeps jumping up to run and interrupt Dixon, who is trying to do the same, with news of his progress. "Jerry, I think it almost happened. Do you get a kind of rum sensation here?" touching the centre of his forehead. "Is that it?" "Mason, first thou must sit, not jump up and down like that, and then sit quietly. Back they go, till Mason in his chair, falling asleep, topples with a great crash, or Dixon decides he'll step out after all, nip down to the world's end and see what the Cape outlawry may be up to. Little by little, as weeks pass, the turn of spirit Mason and Dixon imagine they have witnessed is reclaimed by the colony and by whatever haunts it. Any fear that things might ever change is abated. Masters and mistresses resume the abuse of their slaves, who reply in bush tongues, to which, soon enough, hoarse with despair, with no hope of being understood, they return, as to childhood homes. Riding in and out of town now may often be observed white horsemen, carrying long rifles styled stirloops, each with an inverted silver star upon the cheek-piece. When Mason and Dixon encounter Vrooms in the street, they bow and pass, with each exchange lapsing closer to silence. By the time the southeaster has advanced to the circumference of the day, there remains nothing to say to them, nor to any who have been their hosts. I warned you all, Mrs. de Boche lilts, triumphant. Did I not, everyone? Nor should I be much surprised if those frightful instruments they brought have served quite another purpose here. When they leave the Cape, no one is there at the quay to say goodbye, but Bonk, the police official who greeted them earlier. Good luck, fellows. Tell them at the desk I was not such a bad egg, no. What desk is that? Asked Mason and Dixon. What desk? In London, off some well-kept street, in a tidy house, there will be someone at a desk, to whom you'll tell all you have seen. Not in England, sir, Mason protests. For the first and final time they see him laugh, and glimpse an entire life apart from the castle, in which he must figure as a jolly drinking companion. You'll see, he calls as they depart for the ship in the bay. Good luck, ha ha ha, resounding upon the water, ever widening between them. What made them leave home and set sail upon dangerous seas, determining where upon the globe they must go, was not, pace any astrologists in the room, the heavenly event itself, but rather that unshining assembly of human needs, of which Venus, at the instant of going dark, is the prime object, including certainly the Royal Society's need for the solar parallax. But what of the astronomer's own desires, which may have been less philosophical? Love. I knew it, Tenebrae all but sighs. 'Twas love for the planet herself. Nothing like your own, of course, beams her uncle. I recollect that when you were no more than 3, you saw Venus through your papa's fine Newtonian for the first time. 'Twas in the crescent phase, and you said, look, the little moon. You told us that you already knew the moon had a little moon, which it played with. We would go outdoors, long after bedtime, up to the pasture, she is pleased to recall. The observatory wasn't built yet. The ponies would all stand together, quite cross, and watch us as we came up, their eyes flashing in the light from our lanthorns, and I always thought I could hear them muttering, for it was clear we were disturbing them. Did they bite you? Inquires Pitt. Hard, adds Pliny. Rrr. She raises her hoop as if to hurl it at them. Do find a way, advises Aunt Euphemia, careering into the room with her oboe and an armload of sheet music, to wrangle with less noise, or your old uncle will have to sell you as a brace to the Italians rumoured to live south of this city, where you shall have to learn to sing their vulgar airs and eat garlic every day, as shall everyone else. Hooray, shout Pitt and Pliny, for breakfast too? Tra-la, say, food perversion. Nothing to do with the cherry coke side of the family, sniffs Aunt Euphemia, producing the most wicked-looking of knives, and beginning very carefully to carve a reed for her instrument from a length of Schulkel-side cane. Yes, lovely, isn't it? She nods after a while, as if responding to a pleasantry. 'Twas given me by the Sultan. Dear Mustafa, Stuffy, we called him, in the harem chambers, amongst ourselves. When Bray, once and only once, made the mistake of both gasping and blurting, "Oh, Aunt, were you in a Turkish harem, really?" 'twas to turn a giant tap. Barbary pirates brought us actually as far as Aleppo. You recall the difficult years of 80 and 81? No, of course you couldn't. Levant company in an uproar, no place to get a drink, Ramadan all year round it seemed, howbeit 'twas at the worst of those depredations that I took a passage from Philadelphia upon that fateful tide, the moon reflected in Dock Creek the songs of the negroes upon the shore disconsolate. Most of her tale, disguised artfully as traveller's narrative, proved quite outside the boundaries of the girl's innocence, as of the twins' attention. Among the domes and minarets, the mountain peaks rising from the sea, the venomous snakes, miracle-mongering fakirs, intrigues over harem precedents, and diamonds as big as a girl's playfully clenched fist. 'Twas inconvenience which provided the recurring motrix of Euphemia's adventures among the Turks, usually resolved by her charming the bystanders with a few appropriate notes from her oboe, upon which now, in fact, her reed shaped and fitted, she has begun to punctuate her brother Wix's tale, with scraps of Ditters von Dittersdorf, transcriptions from Quantz, and the Scamozetta from I Gluttoni.